Trudy Mason sitting in for Aaron Rand for the next couple of weeks, bringing you a story that captured a lot of attention earlier this month. It has to do with a cold case involving a Laval man who disappeared 37 years ago. And thanks to the work of a group of divers called Exploring with a Mission, it looks as though that cold case has been solved with the discovery of a submerged vehicle with human remains in it. Here to tell us more about how this all came about, William McIntosh. He's a diver with Exploring with a Mission. William, thanks for joining us on CJAD.
Good afternoon. How are you?
I'm doing okay. Now, start us at the beginning. Before we get to this case of the car in the Mille River, tell us about the advent of Exploring with a Mission. What is that group about? Who is that group?
So we are a 501c3 nonprofit organization that has, in essence, been put together to locate missing persons all over the world that are missing with a vehicle. We're just out here trying to do everything we can. We're a bunch of dads, Dan down under, myself, we have, 3 kids, and, we're just trying to do things that make a difference in the world. And at the same time, I know that there's a major environmental impact of how many vehicles are in our riverways and ponds and lakes in North America, as well as in Australia and other countries. We estimate that there are about 100,000 vehicles in our rivers and ponds and lakes, and we need to get those out because they pose a danger and a risk to people on boats, people jumping off of bridges, people jumping off of docks, and jet skiers and the like. At the same time, while finding missing persons while searching for those cars.
How did you hear about the case of this Laval man who has been missing for 37 years?
So I've been working with MDIQ, with Stefan, on the case of Pierre Guevin that we solved 7 days before that. And, from the standpoint of translation, and he introduced me to Natalie St. Louis, and I had a conversation with him as we left Maniwaki searching for Christine Thibault and Michael Scandifio in Otter Lake. And I said, listen, Natalie, I think it's very plausible that we can find your dad. I will be there in less than an hour. And if you'd like to meet, I'd like to meet with you, and then we'll get right into action. And so we met her at 8 o'clock. And at 4:15, after sitting down with her and learning more about her dad's story, we decided we're getting right into action. And we put the boats in the water, and we began sonaring the Eel River all the way around from the location of where he lived, which is 17th Street, down to 11th, where the rapids start, all the way up under the bridges to the apartment complex, where the last place that he could actually possibly drive into, and then back down. And then I looked at depth charts. We looked at a few other pieces of tools that we have, and went, there's a deep hole around the corner, I think. Let's take a look at that. And as we drove down the bank, we could see the embankment. There was a large rock in the water that you could see on sonar, and then it dropped off the face of the planet to 50, 60, 70 feet. And right there was the boat ramp. And I learned that, because he didn't have any money, he didn't have any gas, that he couldn't go far. And so when we came around the corner, we really looked at the sonar very carefully. And Dan picked up an object on the sonar, and then I picked up 2 objects side by each. And the second one looked like a Jeep Cherokee on its roof, and because of the pillars, and the rest is history. We magneted it, buoyed it, and we went and picked up Natalie and brought her around the corner. But it took a team effort. I mean, from Cade to Robin, Dan, myself, and Natalie herself being present, really pushed us to find an answer for the family.
What led you to believe that the car was in the water to begin with? What indications had there been? And do you think it was an accident that he drove down that boat ramp accidentally?
Well, the fact that he didn't have any money, that he didn't have the key to his gas can, to his gas cap, that he was struggling with, his home life and struggling with his business because the fur business had failed in the 80s. that he didn't have a means of income for his 5 children and his future grandchildren. I think that something might have occurred. But the reality is there's also a 1983 pickup truck that was positioned directly behind it and on top of it. And we're not sure if both vehicles went in at the same time, or if one went in later. It's hard to tell. So we're not sure if it was self-harm or if there was something nefarious that occurred, but the reality is that's up to the SQ and the police of Laval to determine what that is.
It really is an astounding case that so quickly you were able to succeed where law enforcement was not able to. Is that typical of your cases?
Well, so we're members of Adventures with Purpose. We're sponsored and funded by Adventures with Purpose as a platinum sponsor, and we were all members. Both Dan, myself, and Cade and I are still work with Adventures with Purpose quite frequently or all the time. And so, with 39 cases solved, we diagram a life pattern of an individual, and we look at their journey patterns of where they travel, and in this case, when I drove down St. Louis Boulevard with Natalie in front of us, I knew that was him. The moment I saw the sign, St. Louis Rue St. Louis, I knew that we had found him before we even looked at the water. And so, the fact that it was across the street from his house, across the water, in the only deep hole, tells me that he knew that hole, that he knew that location, and that it was very possible that it was on purpose. And we've seen that time and time again with our cases in the U.S., with the cases in Australia that we have solved, that these individuals that are having a mental difficulty or emotional difficulty and psychological issues, that they are going to places that are comfortable, that they know the depth. They know that it's 15 feet deep. They know that it's 20 feet deep. They know that it's 60 feet deep. And so that's why we're having the success. And the other reason is because we are using very top-of-the-line fishing sonars that have down live inside, and we are very close to the water, able to stay close to the banks and look all the way out 100 feet. And we're not looking underneath the blanket, pulling a sonar system that is a tube to the water. We're looking at every nook and cranny, and we're doing it at 2 to 5 miles an hour upstream, so that we have perfect images of the bottom of the river. Whereas if you go downstream, you end up going too fast, and it skews the image. If you go from a bad angle or in a wave, you skew the image. It becomes elongated or too small. So it's a little bit of technique. It's a little bit of trial and error. Dan and I have found 200 to 300 cars on the bottom of rivers and know how to identify, and our eyes are tuned into it, where police have not done that many cars, and people that are on the sonar system change, weekly, monthly, and so you might see 2 or 3 cars on the sonar in a month or a year, whereas we've seen hundreds.
Tell you, we thank you for your work. Thank you very much, William McIntosh, diver with Exploring with a Mission, providing closure to that family of Robert St. Louis. Thank you, William, for your time and the interview.
Honored to be here, and thank you so much for having me.